we go forward in our public deliberations. Amen.
Amen.
Please join with me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. As everybody knows, we've had a pretty crazy few days. We've maintained unbelievable level of communication with Dominion. They have consistently whittled down the number of folks who are without power. We're hopeful in the next day or two that everybody within the city limits of West Columbia will have power. Our staff has worked incredibly hard to make the roads as safe as possible, to keep the trash being picked up, to clear roads as power lines are removed from the stacks. We've got more work to do, and we appreciate everybody's patience and support while that's being done. Very thankful for the kind words that people have passed along, and if you can, help out your neighbors where you can and when you can, and we'll hopefully have everything back to normal soon. So, anything else from staff?
Mayor, just want to add that, as you said, thank you for speaking toward staff that worked tremendously hard and nonstop since Friday, actually Thursday evening. But we know that there are residents who may need food or water or other supplies. We have posted a list of food banks and other opportunities and resources for our residents on our website, understanding that some people may not have access to that, especially if they don't have power. Anybody who is in need can certainly come to City Hall or call City Hall, and we will put them in touch with the resources that would be available to them.
I gotcha. I'd like to give a special thanks to Michael Mayo. He's been my go-to river expert for consultation on all of the projections as we've monitored things coming into our watershed from out of state and from the upstate, and it's been an incredibly valuable asset to me to be able to reach out to him, as always, on anything dealing with the river, but particularly with these flows that we've seen coming in. So thank you, Michael. We appreciate it. With that being said, we'll move on down to presentations and recognition. And normally we would have the clerk read this for Hispanic Business Day, but she is actually going to read that at the State House in a week or two, I think, October the 11th. So I think everybody's had an opportunity to review it without it being recited. And at this time, I would welcome a motion that it be proclaimed.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion on it? Hearing none at this time, if you're in favor, please raise your hand. Councilmember Mattern? It is unanimously proclaimed. Moving down to approval of minutes for previous meetings, unless there's objection, I would like to take up item 7.1 and item 7.2 in a joint motion. Any objection? Hearing none at this time, I would welcome a motion to approve the minutes from the regular council meeting held on September the 3rd, 2024, and the special council meeting held on September the 16th, 2024. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Hearing none at this time, if you're in favor, please raise your hand. Councilmember Mattern? They are unanimously approved. Moving down to item 8.1 under new business, we will take up consideration of a resolution authorizing the consumption of beer and wine at the Wine on the River fundraiser sponsored by the Lexington Medical Center Foundation. We'll hear from Ms. Laura Peebles. Ms. Peebles, as you're coming up, I'd like to say I received word yesterday that the Therapy Place was awarded a grant through y'all's most recent
community
grant
outreach
determinations,
yes, sir.
and that place has been an unbelievable asset for me and my family, and thank y'all for recognizing them and supporting their mission.
Absolutely. The community outreach grants are a great way that the hospital and the foundation recognize our partners in healthcare all throughout the community, and the Therapy Place is definitely one of those. Well, thank y'all for your time today. Very blessed and grateful that we can gather together safely to even talk about planning an event in November. But Wine on the River is coming back around on November 8th. This is the Lexington Medical Center Foundation's annual fundraiser for the Linda's Love Fund, which is our internal fund that provides holistic care resources and programs for the patients and families that we serve. It will take place on Friday, November 8th at Stone River in the West Columbia Riverwalk from 6 o'clock until 10 o'clock at night. And there will be live music played, and we will have wine, craft beer, and food tastings for the guests to enjoy, as well as a whole slew of activities that promote wellness, stress relief, and community. And we really love this event because it brings people together in a positive and a fun way to dispel stigma around mental health and to raise those dollars for us to be able to offer services to families. And I just wanted to quickly list a couple of things that these dollars accomplish, because this is an event we've held for many years and that y'all have supported for many years. But at Lexington, we really believe in compassionate care, and we know that we're taking care of medical needs, but there are so many other needs that our patients have, and that includes mental, emotional, and spiritual needs. And so through the Linda's Love Fund, we're able to provide programs that take care of those things. A particularly special one that we do is for our families that are in the medical ICU where they lose a loved one, and it's a very, very difficult time for them. We offer a couple of different items to help them with the grieving process. One of those are keepsake hands, where they're able to have the hand of their loved one cast, and they can keep that as a memento. And we also offer heartbeat bears, where before they pass, we're able to record that heartbeat and place it in a bear for the family to have, again, to remember their loved one. Out in the network, we continue to do safe side suicide training in all of our practices. This is everyone from the person scheduling your appointment to the nurse to the physician taking care of you. All throughout the network, they know how to recognize when someone is in a situation of distress and they may be having a mental health crisis where we need to try to intervene. And they're also trained on how to do that, how to connect to those resources. And then even beyond the patients that we serve, the Linda's Love Fund does programs that benefit the employees. So you got to care for the caregivers. Our healthcare workers see a lot of things that are very difficult. They carry a lot of burdens, a lot of trauma. And so we offer post-trauma resources counseling that's different than any kind of other EAP services. It's completely anonymous, self-referred, where an employee can go and get help if they need while they're carrying out their work so that they can continue to provide that great care to our community. So these are just a couple of the programs that are all made possible by this event.
We thank you for all that y'all do every day for our community. We thank y'all for having this event in West Columbia because it's always a wonderful, wonderful event. We have a great time. And I want you to know, personally, I'm sorry we weren't able to accommodate the request to close Alexander. We looked at it every way we possibly could, and hope y'all understand that we would have loved to have been able to do it, but given the timing of the event and the traffic flows, we just couldn't figure out a way to do it safely.
Absolutely.
But I think we'll be able to accommodate y'all's needs with doing some additional
Yes.
help with the crossing, and don't want you to think that our inability to accommodate that is any type of reflection on us not having a desire for this event to continue.
Oh, absolutely. We know we're in good
love
hands
the
with City of West Columbia Police as well.
Is there a motion? Is there a second? Second. Any discussion?
All adult event?
Yes, yeah. This is for 21 and over, and we check licenses at the door.
Any other questions? Hearing none at this time, if you're in favor, please raise your hand. Councilmember Mattern?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 8-1. And please, if you don't support the event, don't go to it.
Thank you very much.
Moving down to matter 8.2, we'll take up consideration of a resolution to authorize the consumption of beer and wine at the Fall Rhythm on the River concert series on October 17, 2024 at the Wyman C. McRish Riverwalk Amphitheater. We'll hear from Steve Cohen. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hey, is this the revised date Okay, good deal.
Yeah, this is the makeup for the Friday, which we know y'all would have made every effort to make it available to us, but that would have stressed Jared too much. So this is the makeup for the Friday, which will give us 2 in a row, the 17th and the 18th, closing it out.
Good deal. First event was supposed to be this Friday. We don't know if the Riverwalk's gonna be, out from underwater yet. We don't know what state it's gonna be in once it is out from underwater, so we're just moving this Friday back to a later date. With that said, any other discussion? Hearing none, if you're in favor, please raise your hand. Councilmember Mattern? Passes, all those opposed? Passes 6-3.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen, we appreciate all you do to help run that event. Moving down to matter 8.3, we'll take up consideration of a resolution authorizing West Columbia City Council to execute an American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, Stormwater Infrastructure Program subrecipient agreement between the City of West Columbia and the South Carolina Office of Resiliency to fund a stormwater infrastructure improvement project that will mitigate the impact of future disasters. We'll hear from Ms. Catherine Call.
Hey y'all, this is a grant that we had previously received, and there was some additional funding available for just a little bit more work. So they were able to give us a little over $200,000 to continue the work we're doing for stormwater resiliency in the Mill Village.
Any questions? Well, first of all, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, questions, concerns?
Is this just an adjustment because costs have gone up, or is it for additional work outside the scope?
Additional for the cost.
Gotcha.
Any other discussion?
I just have one other question. It seems here that we will assume the total stormwater, the maintenance and all the other requirements for this, right?
Already did.
So, yeah, so the areas that are covered in this scope of the project are overwhelmingly predominantly city roads, owned roads and infrastructure maintained anyway. So the stormwater improvements that are going on in this area are our own and responsibility from this point going forward.
We did some wheeling and dealing a couple years ago with SCDOT and ended up assuming responsibility for all those roads and the associated stormwater, so it's already ours. It's just a matter.
And this is only for the Mill Hill, right?
That area.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
Good deal. Hearing no further discussion, if you're in favor, please raise your hand. Councilmember Mattern? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving down to matter 8.4, we'll take up consideration to approve the Lake Murray Utility Company Incorporated as the lowest responsible bidder in the amount of $3,402,185 for the South Carolina Highway 302 water main replacement. We'll hear from Mr. Andy Zangle unless there's a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion, questions, concerns? Hearing none at this time, if you're in favor, please raise your hand. Councilmember Mattern? It is unanimously approved. Moving down to matter 8.5, we'll take up first reading consideration of the Planning Commission's recommendation to establish PUD R on approximately 9.48 acres at 910 Comanche Trail, tax map number 004662-01-001. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion, questions, comments, concerns?
We have an amendment for that?
If you'd like to make a motion for an amendment,
Yeah. I move that, the descriptive statement, that it be added to the descriptive statement that there shall be a sidewalk on both sides of interior roads and in front of street trees.
is there a second? Any discussion?
You want it on both sides of the street? In front of trees?
Yeah, the reason for that is because it's an aesthetic reason. that way people keep their cars and stuff off the curb, so your sight line is clear, and then, and you have the street trees in your sight line instead of having cars. And I already talked about this with the developer, and they were okay with it. But it was to bring it up in, the best way to do it is to bring it up in the meeting.
So certainly if it's adopted and the developer needs any changes or would like to discuss any changes, we can certainly have those discussions between now and second reading, but it's my understanding that the developer is generally in agreement with them. And, I think it would be a good addition to the development myself. Any other discussion?
My only concern with that is, and this is coming from my own neighborhood with trees, is a lot of the trees have, in certain places, and actually they've started taking those trees down in a lot of places that were on the road for numerous reasons, but a lot of them have started moving the sidewalks up, so we've got uneven sidewalks now that aren't even, and people have tried to fix them, and because of that, very few people are using sidewalks. Do we know what kind of trees? Are we gonna have trees that are gonna have root systems in there that might do this to the sidewalks as they've done in ours? And that's my only concern. And and I think the other thing in this one probably would be done is the sidewalks will be built out when the roads are built, correct? Is that correct? Not per lot.
I'm sorry?
So the sidewalks will be built out as one, not per lot.
Yeah, so that, I'm sorry, yes. So that's something we would certainly have to discuss. You know, I know when I built in my neighborhood, we did the sidewalk last after our house was built. So we'd have to work with the contractor on that kind of thing and the developer to make sure that the sidewalk is not damaged as part of the construction of the house.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea. I just want to make sure, like I said, my concern is the sidewalks being torn up by the trees. And then what stage will the sidewalks be done?
You want to maybe go ahead and incorporate it in, and then we can fine tune after we talk to the developer and get some additional input on anything that's needed between now and second reading?
It's good with me.
Any other discussion? Hearing none at this time, if you're in favor, please raise your hand.
We're voting on the amendment, right?
We are voting on the amendment. Councilmember Mattern? It is now amended. Having been amended, I will welcome a motion to adopt it as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the now amended motion? Hearing none at this time, if you're in favor of adoption as amended, please raise your hand. Councilmember Mattern? It is unanimously given first reading consideration. Moving down to item 8.6, we'll take up first reading consideration of the Planning Commission's recommendation to approve the rezoning of one parcel totaling 0.2 acres at 509 Jasper Street, tax map number 004656-02-010 from LM Light Manufacturing to the requested R1 residential. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion?
Could we just hear from Wayne on
Absolutely.
why this requirement is?
I'm sorry, ask that again, I'm sorry.
Oh, I mean, why are they requesting this?
Oh, I apologize. Yes, so we received a building permit from Habitat for Humanity to construct a house on the property. When they submitted the permit, it was identified that the property is zoned light manufacturing, which does not permit residential. And so staff reached out and worked through it with them through the process of getting it rezoned.
Is 509 Jasper Street, that's to the right of the house?
So 509 is the vacant lot?
Okay, all right. All right, I thought that was, okay, I was just making sure. And they're just, and their intention is just to build one house?
Correct. One single-family dwelling, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it was rather unfortunate. They had folks lined up with a large volunteer pool to come in and go ahead and get started. And once they came in to get the permit to get started, they found out that it was not appropriately zoned. So that certainly was nothing on us. It was just an unfortunate situation. This will create that problem so they can move forward with the construction of the home.
Wonderful.
Any other discussion? Hearing none at this time, if you're in favor, please raise your hand. Councilmember Mattern? It is unanimously given first reading. Moving down to item 8.6, we'll take up consideration of a resolution to approve the Planning Commission's recommendation for the Capitol Square redevelopment floating zone designation based on the submitted Capitol Square redevelopment project. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any discussion?
Mayor, I do have one, and I did not bring this up, so I'm sorry if I'm blindsiding you all. But is there going to be any workforce housing in this project, or would you consider any for that house, for that project?
I don't know that the developer has any plans for any specific type of tenant to be inside of the residential component. This is, at least my understanding of the approval is simply an approval of the overall type of use, and I'm unaware of any consideration of, specific tenants to fill the housing that's constructed.
Wayne, I just wanted to clarify. I was going through the documentation. It's my understanding, they've got, one of the exhibits is for pedestrian pathways. I noticed that there were a few spots where if you were in one spot, you'd be physically close to somewhere that might be more of an attraction, but it'd be inconvenient to reach it because of a disconnect in the pedestrian pathway. It's my understanding that this can be amended by the developer later on, the pedestrian pathways, to catch details like that.
Yes, sir. We could address that at the planning commission level.
Okay. So they would have to come back to the planning commission in order to,
So
or are
there's,
they coming back?
yeah, so there's no anticipation at this point. They would have to go back to the planning commission. So as long as it's consistent with what was previously approved, I don't think there would be an issue in trying to get something amended.
David, I think that once this is adopted, it would then come in for a staff review to make sure that the proposed build-out development is consistent. And by consistent, and it doesn't have to be, you showed a tree here and there's not a tree there. You showed a path here and now that path is 20 feet over.
Right.
I think it's a matter of it being substantially consistent. Staff would then be able to approve it as a prior authorized development. And there would be no additional planning commission review and approval and no city council review and approval. If there was anything that required a more substantial change, then it would be subject to additional approvals. Is that a?
Yes, sir. That's accurate. Absolutely.
Any other discussion?
I would just reiterate my point, and I'm going to vote no on this if they will not consider workforce housing just for the first reading, and see if we maybe can work out something in the second reading.
So I just want to make sure I understand that you're saying that unless,
They would consider workforce housing.
But I just-
Consider some percentage to be workforce housing.
I just want to make sure that you're saying that unless a developer is willing to consider some type of subsidized housing, you're not willing to approve development in the city of West Columbia.
I'm not willing to do it on the first reading until we have some time to talk to them and see if they would do any or not.
Well-
The housing has gone sky high in the city, and it is time that we require some developers to do some workforce housing for our residents, or else they're not gonna be able to afford rent anymore. And that's just my opinion. I got it.
Mr. Green, have you capped the rent that you charge on your rental properties?
I have rent on my rental properties, and I charge rent.
Have you
No,
capped
I
it at
haven't
anything
capped
below the
it.
market rate?
No, because I'm not required, because I don't have to come before a city council and get approval. If you come before a city council, I've said this in open session, in our planning session, that I think that we should be looking for developers to give us some percentage. I mean, even if they just give us 1% workforce housing, that would be a start. And so that's my feeling.
Okay, and I think it's only appropriate that our staff and the developers fully understand what it is you mean when you say workforce housing. So please explain to us what this model of housing is that you're talking about?
Well, that can be worked out in the details, but workforce housing is housing that people who are working a regular job can afford to pay the rent on.
What's a regular job?
A regular job of the median income of the city of West Columbia, which is, I think, only at about $30,000 to $40,000 a year.
Okay, and if a person were to be approved to do a development and they did not include workforce housing as you described it, what would be the consequence?
No, I said that I would want the developers to at least consider it before they did the final before they did the final plans. And I think that we should require basically any developer to at least consider giving some percentage to workforce housing.
Should the city of West Columbia pay the difference?
No.
In the rent?
No, they should not.
So the developer should just bear the cost.
The developer should bear the cost, and they can bear the cost for a percentage of it, if they do a small percentage rather than a big percentage.
And should they bear that cost because of the benefit to society as a whole?
Yes, because we're giving them also, we're also giving, well, I mean, we were going to, but we're doing some public infrastructure there.
Would you agree that that is socialism?
No, that is not
They are
socialism.
bearing the cost, that they are bearing the cost
Every
for the
city,
benefit of society as a whole as opposed to exercising their private property right.
every city is starting to do this to require developers to do a percentage in workforce housing.
My guess
And-
is that they would be doing that because they're working with a nonprofit of some sort, and that came early in the process. I'll say, just personally, I think your aims are noble. I think that's, worthy. I think it's not the proper time to do it at this point. I think the logistics of what's going on here aren't legally sufficient for what you're trying to do at this point, that it'll probably take things off the road, i.e. running into a wall, so to speak. But if there are nonprofits around that do affordable housing or workforce housing, also with DEW and talking to Director Floyd, I think there are other projects in the future of which, if on the front end you would like to council to entertain something like that, we can do that and get together and have a multi-party joint project that we probably can facilitate with some grant funding and other things that would make what your proposal to the developers here for this project feasible and viable and something that West Columbia could be proud of.
I want to just echo what Councilmember Dickey said. The kind of project that you're talking about, it would have to be at the planning stages for the developer, or at this point, we would need to have a program like that in place, in the form of a tax abatement or something like that, that we don't really have a lot of latitude as a city to do, like some larger cities have done with this issue. And quite frankly, we don't have quite as I do agree that we have an affordability problem, but it's not as exaggerated as some of the places that are doing that at this time. I think this would be a good thing to bring up maybe in the visioning session, so we could broadly figure out how we can tackle this issue. But at this point in the process of this particular deal, I don't think it would be advisable or feasible.
Yeah, I believe strongly in the Constitution of the United States of America and the state of South Carolina, including the equal protection provisions within both of them. And I'd like to go ahead and say affirmatively that any discussion that we have along this line to be applied to anyone who rents property in the residential sector needs to be applied across the board to everyone who rents property in the residential sector in West Columbia. So if you want to bring that up and entertain it, please do, but I want to see you bit by the same snake you put on somebody else.
Mr. Mayor, if I can interject, I do want to point out that the agenda item says first reading. As you correctly identified when you announced the item, this is the passing of a resolution. This is the sole reading that will come before council. There will not be a second reading.
I just want to say this. We've sat here and we've looked at this property now for almost the entire 9 years that I've been on council. There's been discussions ever since Brooklyn was discussed, and before I was on council, this property went hand in hand. And I think that it would be great if the whole council would support what's going on down there and get this project to fruition, get this project done, because I think this is another huge piece of the hard work that our staff has done, the developer has done, this council has done, and I would like to see us be unanimous behind what they're doing and support this project the way it deserves to be supported. This has been a long road. We seem to be getting toward the breaking some ground and moving forward. And quite frankly, it's going to be nice to see a piece of property have dirt turned down there and boards off buildings that are on there now, and you know, some good activity. I think it's going to lead to a lot of other activity down there. So again, Councilman Green, I hope you get on board with this. It would be awesome to see a unanimous decision. But I don't think tonight was the time or place for that discussion.
I would just like to respond to those comments. As I prefaced my comments, I said that I do not mean to surprise anyone or anything with this. But I am bringing this issue up for discussion, and I think it is something that we need to discuss. And now, as our city administrator has said that this is going to be the only reading of this, I will change my vote on this, but I have brought up the issue, and I would like us to continue to consider that when developers come before us and require us to give public money or to do something of public infrastructure, that we make certain requirements of them. And I believe that this is a requirement that we can do in the future. And so I appreciate that, but I thought that this was going to require 2 readings, not 1 reading.
And I hope you do bring it up in the future. You've brought a lot of stuff up in the last year and a half and never bring it up again, so I hope you do.
Yes, and you don't bring any issues up, Mr. Brooks.
You have no idea what I do down there, Mike. So you just shut your mouth and sit down there and be quiet.
All right, I think y'all have said enough on this issue. Any other discussion of the matter before this body?
Like to thank y'all for bringing a good project to a really, really low end of the city that you couldn't need it anymore. That could be the best part of the city. So I hate to hear all this going back and forth. I want you to know, but we are behind you, and I don't think that there needs to be any cap or anything like that. But that's just me speaking. Working class housing or whatever. I work too, but thank you.
Any further discussion?
Oh, yeah, I want to say that I'm really excited about the direction that it's taken. This project gets better and better every step of the way. It gets a little bit closer in line with what our goals are and what's feasible. And I just want to commend the developer for seeing it through all the ups and downs that we've gone through the years. So thank you.
Anything else? Hearing no further discussion, if you're in favor, please raise your hand. Councilmember Mattern? It is unanimously considered and approved. We are not going into executive session tonight. There was nothing that was so pressing that we can't wait till another day to take up, given all that everybody's been through over the last several days. And this time I will welcome a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Hearing none. This time, if you're in favor, please raise your hand. Councilmember Mattern? We are unanimously adjourned. I thank you all. Sarah, I'm gonna hang up the phone now.
See you, Sarah.
Bye.